I actually heard that Dave said he is now in charge of overseeing every bit of programming at all levels for all competitions. So basically everything goes through his desk before
he didn't
it goes
just leave
live.
it there.
So
He said
it sounds
he
like he
looks over main site and cap. If CrossFit releases programming, he's in charge.
Well, someone needs to audit fucking main site from the last 2 weeks.
That's how you really feel, Hunter.
Wait, what?
Tell me about it.
Guest.
Here we go. Let's go. Go. Get him.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit podcast. Full goon squad.
Chop.
On the pod.
Yo.
Saw dudes.
My slider
Yo.
moved up. Did you move my sound up?
Just let me worry about the audio engineering here, sir.
I don't know, man.
I think you
feel
should
like
let him.
Let me worry about the
Let's
audio
ask the
engineering.
listeners. Do you guys think Hunter should be the producer of this podcast?
Yes. Yes.
Sure.
All right, boys. What you got for life chat?
Well,
Formerly
diving
known as
right
snack
in.
chat, because I eat the same thing every day.
Well,
it's boring.
gentlemen, it happened. Hunty broke a hundy.
In a video game?
At Willowdale from the tips.
Who's
which,
that?
for those of you unindoctrinated, Sherb's tip from Sherb's tip. Very short course.
Yes, it is. Just ask
Really
Noel.
Barely fit your golf
short.
ball on it.
Oh, jeez.
Barely fit
Small,
my
but
golf
it's
ball
fierce.
on Sherb's course from
Only
the tip.
shoots male males.
Fuck.
Well, that's good. Is that like a
Out of
Yeah.
is that
business,
a big
though.
life event? Did you tell your mom?
That
Wrote a letter.
was.
You gonna elaborate?
No, I didn't tell my mom, but I did share with
She might be
people
interested.
who cared. You know, everybody listening to this podcast, and all three of you, I know, care deeply about my golf
You
outing.
use your
so-
driver?
I think about it often.
Yeah. Well, it was barely snuck under. 99 was the finishing score, but Willowdale kind of sucked. It's pretty narrow, a lot of trees to dodge left and right. But yeah, that was the Super Bowl. That was my Super Bowl this year. Instead of the CrossFit Open or quarterfinals, it was the Break 100 year one golfing.
So proud of you.
Why didn't we
Thanks,
live stream
Ted.
it?
You look bigger today.
I did actually.
Angle.
My desk
Fishbowl.
chair is normal. My desk chair is normally like. Fuck.
It's fuck.
I raised
Gross.
my desk chair.
I just meant you looked more manly after your 100.
Oh, thank you.
Have you seen his haircut?
Hunter,
Sure.
I had
I feel it.
a membership at Willowdale. My
The fuck you do there?
Really?
my
I think I left my coffee mug there, which I'm upset about.
in 8th grade.
They have Flamin' Hots there or
Who
something?
the
Is that why?
fuck bought you a golf membership for Willowdale in 8th grade?
All right, hear me out. This is
Uncle Remus.
going to be a really good story.
Sit on the edge of my seat.
I got cut from the 8th grade baseball team because I was mean to the coach's son.
Fucking prick.
Fuck.
He was also the quarterback coach on the middle school football team, and he put me on JV.
I feel like that's
when I was in 8th
Ted.
grade.
I mean, you also weighed, what, 80 pounds? That's why he put you on JV, bro.
Yeah. How
Stick
bad
cut.
were the people ahead of me?
Yeah, that's true.
Ted,
Yeah,
what'd
they
you
were
weigh
fucking
in 8th
terrible.
Grade? 180.
I was 120 in 6th grade. Yeah, I was at 180 in 8th grade. And then 220 by freshman year, 215 by freshman year.
Fuck.
You were 220
Trains come and get off the tracks.
post knee. You were not 220 when you were a running back.
Yeah.
No.
yeah, well, that's true. I was like 210, and then I broke my knee sophomore year, junior year. I don't remember what year it was. Sophomore year, and then I came back. 225.
Is that when the coach laughed at you for coming back, being bigger, and then they said you can't be a running back?
He definitely didn't laugh at me. I think I was one of two players on the team that actually produced anything. So I think he was kind of my buddy.
The next year,
Pretty sure Drew
after
told me that story. So
our junior year, when Ted came back from his injury, he tried to go with the running backs, and we had this like old school 70-year-old coach, and he
That
said
was the
no.
story.
He basically just pointed and was like, go over there with those other people. And Ted said, why? And he said, you run like you have a refrigerator on your back. That's the type of thing that Coach Flynn would say.
true.
He pointed to the stadium stairs, said, "Start walking."
The concussions erase this from my memory.
And then Ted got to hang out with Slovak for a full year. Came out the other side, the scariest.
Twisted.
Yeah. Ted got indoctrinated into
That's
the
why,
way.
That's why
the
Ted
way
is
of,
the way he is now.
it's
a lot
it
of
certainly
compounding
has something
factors.
to do with it.
Let's get Slovak on the podcast.
It certainly has some.
Hey.
You don't.
No,
want,
yeah, I
wow,
do.
actually,
No, yeah, I
that could
do.
be extremely entertaining.
I'd have
That's what I'm saying.
coupon. It'd be about the same.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Because like it doesn't, honestly, physical ability like aside, if you go from running back to defensive end, there's like a learning curve. There's like, what do I do? And then also most people mail it in high school football practice.
Fuck that.
So Ted got to learn how to play defensive end from the biggest psychopath on the entire team.
Oh, I thought
So-
about this. This is a
We also
this
won
is a
our
good
we won our
question
state
for-
championship that year, so those extra
True.
LBs probably helped out.
Here's a question for you three football aficionados.
Not about all that.
What position? Let's take an average NFL team. What position are you going to pull from to create the best CrossFitter? What football
Cornerback?
position would translate to the most to the best CrossFitter?
Running back.
You think a running back? Sure.
Power, speed,
think-
size.
You can tell me I'm stupid, which is probable. I would thought
Left tackle.
immediately like a wide receiver, a cornerback, or like even a linebacker.
Too big. All of those people are too big. That's the problem. So in terms of strength and like energy systems, potentially, but
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
not
small
a
middle
coincidence
linebacker?
it's not a coincidence that the only CrossFitters that we have from that level, almost all of them were running backs just because of size. And then you've got Jason Hopper was a wide receiver outlier, and one of his biggest issues is his size. He's not
huge.
CrossFit sized. Like what he's able to do at his size is pretty fucking insane, to be honest.
How do you think Derrick Henry would fare in CrossFit?
Everyone would just quit. Is he allowed to stiff arm? Oh,
Mandatory.
by the way, you Ted, you got introduced to Max Crosby this weekend.
I sent you that clip.
Yeah, I didn't watch the game. I don't know if he went very Max
Neither did
Crosby
I.
during the game.
He
I didn't watch
really
it either.
didn't. He really didn't, but he had a couple big plays. Like he didn't
I mean, the
kill them the
safety.
entire game. Yeah. Did you watch the blocking on that play? Gasecki was like, why don't you just tackle him? And then Vidarian Lowe was like, hey, it's okay. Go by me too. It was a very sad play. Very sad.
Yeah, that
season
was
for
a hell of
Patriots.
a double team.
It was bad. It was might as well just step beside Ole. Go for it.
He didn't need to be Max Crosby against us. It was we're terrible.
Fucking Devontae Parker, you twat.
Yeah, you
hope he's
blame that
listening.
one guy for the whole team being terrible.
I'm gonna
terrible.
blame
He's
him at
listening,
the very
sure.
very end of that game.
True New
Best
England
throw
fan.
literally of his life, and he fucking futzes it, and the game's over. Not that they would have won, but at least it would have been entertaining. A safety's not entertaining. That sucks. I might be a homer.
Well, you're
Might
definitely
be.
a homer.
Might be.
You're a homer. We know that about you.
You guys want to hear a cool comment from our last podcast?
Yep.
It was our last studio podcast. Can you hear me? Sure. You can't hear me? Turn your headphones up.
Turn my mic up.
So Mars Garcia 3272 says, I listened to you guys for 30 minutes. More BS than is imaginable. You should do some research so you don't sound so uninformed. As a reminder, the first roughly 30 minutes of that podcast was about aliens. So I'm not entirely sure what Mars Garcia wants us to research.
Tell us.
Yeah,
Fuck
that's
me.
a tough thing to research. And I know maybe we got like put into the alien algorithm and we got like some kind of outsider coming in. Yeah, I don't know how to research aliens, considering that
We're
no
pretty,
one's ever seen
we're
one.
pretty much experts on on that topic.
If
think
you're
Mexico has some.
still listening, if you've made it back, you can inform us about what's going on with the aliens. I'd love to know if there's anything that I can research. Okay, so Hunter, I get cut from the baseball team and I buy a set of golf clubs.
Wait, let's talk about that.
We're back
And I
we're
get
back at
a
this.
membership
All
at
right, go ahead.
Willowdale. My freshman year
Yep.
of high school, my plan was to honestly, this guy had a big effect on my life. My plan was to quit football as well, and I was going to be on the golf team my freshman year of high school. The guy who
Jesus.
started football in Scarborough found me at Summerfest and cornered me and forced me to sign up. He just scared the
Gross.
shit out of me, basically. And
Yeah, all of that is the making of a crime.
Is that
But go
Spino?
on.
no, it was
Was it Spino
No,
that
it's,
started it?
Hitchcock.
An old guy cornered me, a freshman at
8th grade.
fucking Summerfest in the porta potty and told me to sign up for football.
Penn State football camp.
asked me to show him how big's my
he
hands
also
were. Yeah, you can grip
same,
the football.
same guy
You're
stole hundreds of
quarterback.
thousands of dollars from Scarborough football. So there's that. Boom, roasted.
Happened to Wyndham too.
Yeah, happens.
He stole
It's a
from
thing,
Wyndham
boosters.
too?
No, I mean boosters. Someone running the boosters like fuck. Let's clean house.
Yeah, good stuff. So I played quite a bit of
So he made you play
yeah,
football,
basically. I was like, yeah, no, I
but you played golf. Did you play golf before you got
played
by
I
Scarborough
played
High
that
School?
whole like I played spring and summer, 8th grade, the whole time.
Did you break 100?
Did you break 100?
I
Like 6 times?
remember I shot like
There's no fucking.
high 40s. Well, I mean, NARPs versus non, you know how it goes. I shot a high 40s 9, and that was like my life achievement. Somewhere between like a 47 and a
There you go.
49, somewhere in that range.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's not bad.
I
did that on
could
the three
play
once.
from my second shot to the hole. I
Yeah, just no big
well,
stick.
no, it was the opposite. I can hit
See,
a
my-
golf ball over 300 yards, but I don't know. I have no clue where it's going. Yeah,
don't know
if I use a
where it's
driver,
going?
I'll be like
Yeah,
4
that's what I
holes
mean.
over on Willowdale. I'll kill some guy like 6 miles
Right.
away. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, my driver was working pretty well actually, but my I had a lot of inconsistencies with the irons, but it still managed to work out. So, goal for next year is to break 90.
90. Wow, that's elite.
That's a pretty big leap, ain't it? 10%.
That is a pretty big leap, yeah.
When are you going pro?
I would like
are you going pro
I would
again?
like to
Have we made it
break
back? Has
90
the pendulum
break 90
swung?
once, but have
Yeah, all right.
have
It's back.
scores. Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, I'm back.
Hunter's back.
I'm back. I'm not a CrossFitter anymore. I'm
Mark
back
it.
to a professional golfer. I'm on track.
Sure.
How are your golf
Yep.
slacks? How are your
my
golf
what?
slacks? Like what's your attire out there? You wearing some fucking silly ass shit?
Oh, you want to know what I wore this weekend?
Oh my
Coach's
God.
pant.
Coach's pant?
You heard it
Coach's
here.
Golfer's
pant
pant?
was ideal.
Should we rename them?
Ideal weight flexibility. Very nice. Yeah. I have a white mainly grass like athletic style fleece from Palmer.
Athletic style
He had like
fleece?
a random
What
one
in
in his
God's
trunk.
name
It
does
says
that mean?
mainly.
If it's from the Higgins
It's
family,
like
it's the quarters
it's
that
like
don't.
it's just it's a polo.
That fleece looks like something
it's a
Pat
quarter
would
zip.
wear.
It's a quarter. It's a
Execute a few
stretchy
trades
quarter
on
zip.
the green.
Like
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Close some
yeah.
deals?
I dropped a yeah.
Close
Yeah.
a few deals. Oh,
Yeah, I
we can
sold a few puts, bought a
puts.
went long.
You can't
long
use
on
that kind of terminology to share
Facebook
on the podcast.
marketplace
No.
dot net.
Definitely.
Sure.
Definitely.
Live chat. What do you got?
Live chat. I got 2 things. One, my 3-year-old started
You
preschool.
cried.
That sucks. If you're looking for a way to get real sad real fast, watch your toddler put a backpack on and walk away from you. That's pretty
You mean
terrible.
finger?
But in a much happier note, yeah, just fuck off.
It's just a silhouette.
In a much happier note,
Fuck you, Dad.
much happier note. Sitting on the couch Saturday evening watching, I don't know, some Mickey Mouse bullshit, and I rip a fart, and Noelle's like, what the hell? Did you just fart? And then Z turns and looks at me, looks at her, turns
Yes.
cheek and rips one right on her. And I was just like, fuck yeah. And she literally like fell on the floor laughing. I just could not believe it. Crafting
my
a mini
God.
version myself. So things are going
I'm
good.
Terrible.
Things are good.
100% in charge
I'll
of
send 'em to your house
human from Thursday to Monday. This
You got
Thursday
this.
to Monday. It's
This
gonna be
Thursday to
interesting.
Monday?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're super fucked.
They're so
you
much
keeping
worse
the
than
dog,
he is.
right? Too.
They're so much
you've
harder
got-
to deal with than a baby. Oh, it's so bad.
That's what I meant. I was like, I actually heard you when you came into the gym this morning. I heard jingling, and I thought for a second there was a dog in tow. I was excited to walk in and see like Hank or Wilbur just like ripping coffee beans open off the.
No, Henry
Fucking
would
coffee
just
stands
try
in
to
here.
bite people that came into the office, and Wilbur and Cash would make way
That's
too much
fine.
noise. Way too much noise. I tried bringing Cash in one day, and he just cried the entire day. It was great. It's a very productive day. Yeah, which is going to be
Soothing.
Thursday. to
Soothing.
Monday. He'll cry for 5 days straight. It'll be awesome.
So any big plans with the old boy, huh?
Survive.
What you gonna do for?
Yeah, what's the metric? What's the metric for success? You're all alive by Monday.
What are the odds at? Betting odds.
I mean, there's honestly no way for it not to be successful. It's just,
I can
in
think of
the
a way.
moment, when it's,
Yeah. Yeah,
with
if you end the weekend with
multiple
fewer than you
There you
started
go.
with, that would be
melting down at the
unsuccessful,
same
probably.
time
Yeah.
is tough. That's when it gets real. That's when it gets real.
Yeah.
Just pull up that Gabe quote anytime you get sad.
You should
I've
just
tried.
join
That
them.
doesn't. I've
You
tried.
should
That
just
does
join
not
them.
help.
Start screaming.
If they all start melting down,
Yeah.
you do too, and see if anybody takes charge.
What was that Gabe quote, Sherb?
I think
What was the exact
You're fine.
words there? It was like everybody in my house is either crying or screaming. No, is sick or is crying. I don't think I'll ever get to work out again. Fuck. I went into the exact quote. I think you have it in your office, don't you, Drew? You're like saving your
I
phone.
lost you there. I didn't hear it.
My favorite Gabe version is when he was in the gym with like Anderson as a little toddler, and Anderson would just trip and fall and just face plant. And before he even had the opportunity to like potentially cry, Gabe just looked at him and goes, "You're fine."
That's how you got to do it
And
with
then
kids,
Anderson looks up and he's just like, "I'm fine," and then just like stands up
Yeah,
and
it
keeps
normally
walking.
works
And
if I
Gabe is
type
like,
whiteboard
"Good."
into Google
Check it
Photos, but it's more so sad.
Fuck.
Yeah, no, Gabe.
Anyway,
Life chat, Ted. What do you got?
my live chat was that mean YouTube comment. That was my live chat.
That's pretty good. I enjoyed that. Do some fucking research.
Who the
Me
fuck
too.
commented on that? I'm gonna get on
I
there.
wish they. I hope
Let's have
they
him on
listen
as
to
a
this one
guest.
too.
Yeah, that's
Get him on
true.
the cast. Let's fight.
I'm curious
debate.
which part
Let's
we need
debate.
to research. I hope it's I hope it's CrossFit related. I hope they're just like, these fucking idiots have no idea what they're talking about with CrossFit.
Accurate.
I'll throw down. I ain't scared.
I mean, maybe he jumped ahead and that's what he was talking about, but I don't know. I doubt it. I'm sure something you said offended him, Hunter.
Oh man. Life.
Oh boy.
Careful.
All
Gonna
right.
hurt my feelings.
I got a special shout out to Kenzie Riley. Took second at the Crash Crucible this weekend.
Second, who beat her?
A girl who was on CLT
curious.
Games team.
Okay.
It's the girl who wins all of the Masters stuff, but then doesn't go Masters. Like she won semifinals and then went team at the games. Her last name is Stutz, I believe, and I've heard that she doesn't have like a super long CrossFit career. But I think I was able to watch most of it. It's kind of interesting. That competition is like a local competition for sure, but they like really ramp it up. Like it's one where they like go into like a lot of detail, and they were streaming it. So I watched, and I think when it comes to Kenzie, it's like, I think she's a month and a half or 2 months back into training. So the question for her was like, she literally got like this girl would probably win the games in the Masters division if she did go Masters, and she got her very first time to see where that gap is. And like, while I'm sure she would have preferred $2,000 over $1,000. Being able to have that right off the bat, I think, is super important, because that's the question. I mean, every time she has a kid and comes back, it's like, where am I actually at now? And
Every time she has a kid and comes back.
Hey, I mean, the last time she was like, can I still even do CrossFit? And she qualified for the CrossFit Games.
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. Oops. So, with her, it's funny. I think she probably thinks it's more about like the movements, and I think it's more about like stacking literal just weeks of training. Like, a lot of people need volume. She does not need high volume. So yeah. So she took second there. And the field was actually like, I think like there were like 5 or 6 high level masters competitors there. So while it was a local comp, she got to actually like throw down and see where she's at.
What did she say was holding her back? Like, in her estimation, what was keeping her, just behind this other female that won?
I think there's quite a few factors. One of the biggest ones is she's been having shoulder issues, and we've stayed away from upper body gymnastics. And there were pegboard, toe to bar, muscle up, parallel handstand, push up.
I was going to say, I saw a lot of photos of upper body gymnastics.
We completely stopped doing that.
Damn.
All of that just a few weeks ago. And she was actually on the fence about whether she was going to do the competition or not. And then, holy shit, like the volume and what the events were wild. Like,
It's a 1 day.
3, I think.
Fuck.
Yeah, it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Ted, I can hear myself. It's fucking me up.
Door is closed.
All right. I think that might have been.
Also,
I think that might have been it.
Yeah. So I think part of it is just like the overall volume. Like the overall volume of that weekend was wild. They took I believe they were all old regionals events, and like changed specific pieces of them. But it's a pretty well-rounded competition. But like they redid the hundreds workout, and on day 3, and it ended with 100 double kettlebell squats. And in true Kenzie fashion, she didn't put the kettlebells down
instead
once
of pistols
the entire time.
Savage.
I'd have to look.
35s?
I'm not sure, but like yeah,
I mean,
the female.
well, either way, that's impressive.
The female.
I was gonna say,
male
fucking
elite were the exact same
thousands.
workouts as the Masters division, and there was like games level athletes there on that side. So I was like asking her like, what's the Masters version? I can't find that anywhere, and she's like, there is. We're doing the same thing.
We're doing it.
But I
Same
do
thing.
think that the 2 top girls would have been, I think, maybe on the podium in the elite female division anyways, based on some of the scores that I saw. So anyways, Kenzie's back. We should get her on the podcast to talk about it a little bit. I think there'd be, as usual, a lot of relatable moments with her trying to figure out how to navigate being a mom and having a job and trying to train and all that stuff. All right, Masters, Teens, and Adaptive Division. This got leaked like at the CrossFit Games. So everyone's half known that this existed, and you'd have like 8 sources tell you that you weren't allowed to tell anyone. And it's like, well, if 900 people know the secret, is it still a secret? But initial reactions, gentlemen, on the divisions moving out.
I like it. I think it's good that they each have their own primary focus where they get to be the show for the thing. I think it's obviously going to be challenging for them to feel the same way about it when they don't get to compete on the same stage in the same like kind of weekend. Because I know, like, talking to Jenna about it, she thought it was kind of a bummer, and I was like, that is disappointing that you obviously aren't on the same weekend or at the same event, but like you get to be the show instead of kind of like a sideshow, which you have been, even though it may not have felt like that to you. For a lot of people that are there, they're, if you're not family members or coaches, you're probably not watching Teens or Masters all that much. So I'm excited that they have their own Super Bowl, their own like event, their own thing where they get to be the marquee show. The only thing that I think is going to be a downside here is that if you aren't If people aren't paying attention and if we don't create, some sort of buzz around this and get people to go and watch and participate and get money injected into that side of the sport, I don't know if it survives. Like, it's going to be really hard for these things to kind of live standalone if they don't get supported by the community. So, like, it's almost like a call to action for everybody. If you love masters and teenage competitions and adaptive competitions, you need to go and support it or they're not going to survive. So I like it, but I'm worried about what's going to happen for the future.
I think it was the obvious direction based on just how, like, combination of media coverage, participation, that sort of thing, the qualification process, I know the adaptive division has gone through basically, like, if everybody competing in the individual divisions were irritated about the changes from, like, national champions to sanctionals to super regionals back to regionals to semifinals, all that nonsense. Like, if you were irritated about that, the adaptive division has been, like, rung around the flagpole even more than that, as far as, like, changes in standards, changes in divisions, stuff like that. So I think that'll be beneficial for the adaptive division to have kind of that one streamlined kind of from start to finish through with wheel wad. I think that I'm not sure what's going to happen with the masters and teens having their own independent thing. I'd be curious to know what attendance at those live events looks like in, like, the first year or two of what that looks like. I think that's ultimately the tough thing, because, like, when you separate those from the main event, you're about to get a very real picture of what spectator interest looks like for those divisions. And that's not to say that those divisions are not worth spectating. It's just a function of what people want to watch and what the market is going to decide. So I think it's good. It seemed to be, like, the obvious route in order to provide those communities with, like, a dedicated championship, whether it's the legends or the pit teen throwdown. I can't say like I was all that surprised. I think everybody here is in a similar boat with that. So I can't say I have, like, a strong opinion on it. I'll be curious to see what happens after a year or two of
these things have
participation and
these events
spectatorship.
existed for a few years, so it's like I think they would probably survive regardless. It's just interesting to how much CrossFit is going to be involved and what they're going to have their hand in the relationship now. Like, I think that's the only thing that's curious to me. Like, I'd love to see things be unified, like CrossFit is the governing body that decides kind of what happens at these events and makes sure that these things are run in the same spirit as the CrossFit Games always have. But I don't know if they do that unless they get more traction viewership wise and, eyes on them in attendance to these things. Because, these things have existed for, I know the pit's been going on since I've known Sophie, which is at least 5 years or 4 years now. And Jenna, also competed there. So, like, it's one of those events that I think will continue to persist. It's just nice that, like, that now becomes their CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other.
Go ahead, Hunter.
Sorry, I was just gonna add that there's also the question mark of, like, what does the marketing kind of look like? Is it the Legends Championship by CrossFit, or is it the CrossFit Legends Championship, or is it the CrossFit Pit Teen Throwdown? Are the winners gonna be able to say the fittest master on earth? It's, like, little things like that I think that, because at the end of the day, like, everybody wants to compete at the CrossFit Games, regardless of what it is. It's like, that's the goal. I want to go into the noble athlete area, get my giant fucking swag bag, be in the athlete area with the CrossFit Games athletes. I think that's probably maybe a frustration point for some of the athletes in the community who aren't super stoked about the separation from the CrossFit Games. And so I think I'd just be curious to know, what is that? Is it what does the marketing and branding sort of look like? Is it the fittest master on earth? Are we going to have other, like, competing organizations try to compete with Legends? If it's like, well, that's not CrossFit, it's Legends. Like, and we can compete against Legends. We can't compete against CrossFit, but we can compete against Legends. Like, does that become a thing? A lot of just kind of unknowns that'll only be answered with time.
I think the fate of both divisions rests almost entirely on what you just said. Like, if it's not, if
How
they
they attach
don't,
it to CrossFit.
if you don't believe that you are going to win the CrossFit Games, that you are crowned fittest on earth, that you get the proven, whatever, the fittest shirt, like all of these things, if they don't brand it that way, if they try to give them too much autonomy, people are not going to buy into it. And someone will try to take over, and all that does is dilute both sides, because it's like you're picking sides, and we know that, sort of behind the scenes stuff that a lot of people don't see. There are different brands that are involved with different agents who, like, hey, just so you know, this squad is like boycotting this one, and you should go over to this one. But then because this squad is boycotting this one, the other one will intentionally go to this other place, and it will split everything up. So if it's not the like Masters CrossFit Games by Legends or something like that, I think this slowly peters out, which really sucks. Obviously, the Masters division is like the only place that I can think of where an athlete that like needs that in their life, needs that fix, someone like a Sherb who can't drop it, who like absolutely needs that. Like, where else are you supposed to go?
Yeah, what do you
And then the feeder system on the other end for the teens, like there's those are two really, really big, important things for the community. And my number one question is, how are you branding this? Are you being thoughtful enough where it's like, if you think that you're being nice to Legends by letting them brand it themselves, I think that's backwards. And I'm not saying that anybody's suggested that, but and then the other piece with like prizes, I think, is so important. Like,
what's the prize
I was
money?
literally
look like?
on a
What are the
call with
prizes?
Kenzie before, like how she's supposed to plan her year and how hard she's going to train and how many eggs go in that basket. We don't have a date. We don't have a location. We don't have prize money. We don't have any of that stuff. And like, that's true CrossFit fashion once again, to have those things going on. Like, do we have an open quarterfinals, semifinals dates? Do we have any of that?
Just the games.
Someone asked that. I don't think so.
I think
Not
just the
yet.
games.
They said,
I think if
Jen
we're
was saying
asking,
that it will be announced at a later date.
yeah, it's lovely.
Classic.
And within the individual and even the teams to a certain extent, like if that's your goal, you're just going to do it, and you got to train a certain way, and it doesn't really change all that much. If you're a high school student or you're someone with a family and like have to plan this shit out, like those people need to know what's going on, right? Like we don't. And another thing is, if they stick it out on the West Coast, and everyone, the population centers and more CrossFitters are on the East Coast, what's that going to do to it? So I think this like list of unknowns is like, I would love some clarity, because you might get some people from those communities to check out early. They might be like, meh, what is this? Do I really want to do this?
Yeah. It just says before the official partnership with CrossFit. So here, this is actually in the announcement from CrossFit. It says, before the official partnership with CrossFit begins, the 2023 Legends Championship will take place in Tempe, Arizona from December 7th through the 10th. So that was what's going to happen this year that was already going to happen. But it does say, quote, official partnership with CrossFit.
Well, I think we know that, but I think it's something as dumb as the name means everything.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree for sure. I mean, it's nice that it says official partnership, which makes me feel like the CrossFit Games have to be in the title somewhere. Fittest on Earth has to be in the title. But I agree. I mean, sure. What do you like? You're a master. There was a time where you were like, yeah, I want to qualify for the CrossFit Games. Like, do you want to qualify for the Legends Championship?
Chick-fil-A Ranch Bowl.
Ooh. Do you get Chick-fil-A?
Brought to
Ooh,
you-
a ranch bowl.
Brought to you by KFC.
I mean, CrossFit Games is obviously huge. That's like fucking shooting for the stars, landing on the moon kind of thing, with semifinals being more realistic, I think, for me personally. But I mean, I've always enjoyed the competitive aspect of what CrossFit has to offer. So while there have been years where they've been more focused on trying to compete and see how far I can make it, like that goal still kind of exists because I like the idea of shooting for something. I like having a goal to shoot for. But like the naming convention for me personally wouldn't deter me, because I don't necessarily see myself as someone going to the CrossFit Games to fight for a prize purse or to fight for the title of fittest on earth, because I don't think that's a realistic goal for me. But I do agree with what Drew said. If it's fucking the Legends, you're kind of fit old guy competition, like that's not going to get the same attention and the same respect that going to the Reebok CrossFit Games, the Noble CrossFit Games, the whoever our next sponsor is CrossFit Games. That has a much different tone and a much different vibe.
Jocko Milk CrossFit Games.
The Milk CrossFit Games. So, I mean, for me, no.
By that logic, though, how many people used to quarter semifinals?
I think it was the top 30.
Yeah, so
from quarterfinals.
It will be, by the numbers, easier to qualify for the CrossFit Games than it used to be to qualify semifinals. Because there's supposed to be 40.
Does that change your mind?
There's supposed to be 40
Not
per
really,
division, correct? Did I make that up?
I heard it was changing, but I heard it was changing, but I don't know the number. That's where I was.
40
yes,
individuals?
40,
or 40
They're going
masters?
to be expanding the Masters division to 40 per division, then 20 once they get to 60. That's a lot of people. That's like a SHRB level amount of people.
Yeah, that is a big competition. That's making it like the individual CrossFit Games.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, you need...
That must be a challenging event to run with all the
you
different
need
divisions.
That parity, though.
Like the divisions.
To make it make sense, you need that parity. Like, you want the specialist to come.
Yeah, you can't have the fucking 10 athletes.
Those 10 athletes have to be so fucking well-rounded that it doesn't create parity. It creates a situation where you don't have, well, we shouldn't say you don't have the guy that comes in and lifts 9,000 pounds, because I think the strongest guy in CrossFit is a Masters athlete. But
Not anymore.
What? Not anymore?
That's what he said.
What?
Sam said he's going back. He's retiring.
He's not
from
the
Masters
strongest
and going
man in
back to
CrossFit. He's
individual.
not even close to the Greek dude.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasn't that Greek
seriously,
dude like
he
a monster?
He beat him by like
Yeah,
100 pounds in the total. And he said he didn't.
That's true.
Told you.
I want to know the
He
power.
told you he didn't get
He did
to
say that
lift.
to me. You're right. I was thinking about Giannis. I only did 390.
Guys,
Sorry, warming up.
I'm right here.
Come on now. That's all your lifts added together.
So I think from that perspective, I think we can come full
For
circle
your whole
Every
life.
single
on
one of
talking
them.
about it. Like
From
from
my
that
whole
perspective, that is what makes this exciting. If they nail the branding and the messaging and the date and the location, I'll just say a prayer. Icelandic Jesus, please help us.
Easy
If they
day.
do all of that,
No,
he
fuck that
canceled
guy.
Cher's vacation. It was amazing. Then we get to talk about the fact that there are like 40 in each division. Like, I think that's a big deal.
Make for better competition, because one of the things that I thought was frustrating 2 years ago working with Roy Gamboa is that he had a very good weekend, but there was not enough people in the competition to then help him jump back up. So basically a gap was presented after like day 2, and unless the person, 2 people ahead of him, absolutely tanked, he had no chance of making up that ground. And at that level, those guys were so well rounded that like a bad event for them is like 5th, which isn't
It always
enough
felt
points
that
to
way in
swing
the
it.
teen division as well. Like, I really always got that vibe. And the funny thing is, we got the 1 year with the top 20, and it actually felt a little bit better. Like, you could tell that scores were being pushed back together. So, exciting perspective. Please do a good job with all of the things that we brought up. That would be absolutely lovely. Huh?
For real. Yeah.
Ted, send this podcast to HQ.
I'll do that.
Come on.
They're watching it now.
Yeah.
It's streaming.
I bet.
Live streaming
I
at
know.
Dave's house.
Castro gave me a dirty enough look at the games that I wondered if he saw the Alice Cooper cover photo from our podcast, or if that's just what his face looks like when he makes eye contact with people.
I think
you
that
pucker?
might just be his face.
No, giggled actually. He read my shirt. He
TE?
read my shirt, looked up at my face, and was just like, eh. I was like, nice. What's up, dude? But again,
Maybe it was
Thank
the
you.
colorway he didn't
it was
like.
like gray, I think.
He seems like a great guy.
True. Okay. Oh, no, you're good.
Other thing, sorry, last
Ooh,
item
ooh.
on the topic is who's writing the programming?
Frank.
And that's more of a rhetorical
I
question.
think we
'cause I
might
don't
know the
answer,
answer
but,
heard-
based on.
That's
Go ahead,
important
Chirp.
too.
You actually heard
Like,
something?
I actually just heard. Yeah, I actually heard that Dave said he is now in charge of overseeing every bit of programming at all levels for all competitions. So basically, everything goes through his desk before
He didn't
it goes
just leave
live.
it there.
So
He said
it sounds like he
looks over main site and cap. If CrossFit releases programming, he's in charge.
Well, someone needs to audit fucking main site from the last 2 weeks.
Tell us how you really feel, Hunter.
Wait, what?
Tell me about it.
Guest.
Here we go.
Like,
Let's go. Go. Get him. Get him.
The guest programming has been suspiciously comprised of lots of very heavy implements and high skill, heavy, lots of
Like a games athlete
some
wrote it?
redundancies, if you will. Suspect variants,
All right.
yeah.
Hunter, how long did the 10 to 1, or is it 1 to 10 or 10 to 1 of deadlift at 315 and front squat at 225 take you?
I'm still working.
He keeps the
I'm on
bar.
day 4.
The bar.
Is that the
out in
weeks
kitchen
program?
area here at the office and just goes and snags a few every once in a while.
Yeah, I got my deadlift bar at Hannaford, and I got my front squat bar at my
Sick.
house, and I got to warm up my front squat every time I get there.
Oh, lovely.
Time that shit
So-
my calendar.
One thing that we don't get to say very often, and honestly, partially a source of pride, we don't have remote coaching openings very often. We do actually have a pretty wide, deep staff, but we don't like to have too many people on each roster for reasons that I'm sure the listener could appreciate and guess. But we actually do have some remote coaching openings right now. You can head to misfitathletics.com and apply for remote coaching there. I don't know if you guys have any insight into maybe the use cases. For me, there are sort of two specific ones. Number one, if you are competing or trying to compete at the semifinals and games level, I think you need a remote coach. We do everything that we can to make it feel like you have something of like a remote coach through the podcast and through Discord. But when it comes to performing at that level, there's nuance there that is like so incredibly important. And I actually have a topic today that'll help shed some light on that a little bit. And then the other one is really just, I am at point A, I want to be at point B, and it's financially like makes sense for me to go in and do this. I think those are, to me, the two use cases that come to mind. And I mean, we can dig in a little bit into what remote coaching actually is, but I don't know if there's any other avenues that you guys think someone would be looking at this from.
I mean, I think someone trying to figure it out on their own. Maybe they started as a lone wolf following either main side or whoever's programming, and have gone to a situation where they feel like that's stagnating and they need fresh eyes and fresh perspective, because there are plenty of athletes who are willing to work hard, but maybe only see the world through one lens and need someone to bounce ideas off from. And I really believe anybody that's trying to do their best in any endeavor needs to have some sort of person they can have ideas bounced off of or like look up to as a mentor. And I think that's the value in remote coaching, is that, everyone has this weird fantasy that everyone that's really good kind of figures this shit out on their own, and that couldn't be further from the truth. And I think that's probably the number one reason why someone would want to look into remote coaching, is to have that second person to make them question the way they believe certain things and hope that gets them to,
You had to sum up what remote coaching does for an athlete in 1 minute. What would it be?
1 minute?
Yeah,
Christ.
bitch.
I gotta go take a piss.
makes you better. P.
I think it's a transition from, we're going to get the things that like we really specialize in figured out early on with regards to how you move, how you think about workouts. and then it transitions into like a bit more programming specific and ends up being very much mindset related. Like there's a lot of legwork that needs to get done in the first year or two. And then so much of it after that is like you have a accountability coach that is there and, really pushes you. But there's a lot of legwork in those first couple of years to get you to a baseline where it's not like there's not going to be any huge epiphanies when it comes to movement efficiency or strategy or what your pacing looks like. That's when we really tick over to like what motivates a person, how do they get better. I'm going over a minute, but yeah, that's. I would say that's the journey that most of my athletes go on if we get to work together for 2-3 years.
Athletes that I have one athlete who has been doing CrossFit for long enough that they want to continue to see personal progress, maybe aren't necessarily interested in like pursuing like semifinals. It's like, hey, we're a quarterfinals level athlete. The amount of work required to jump to the next level is more than we have time energy for, and is probably maybe not realistic, but he's a working professional, and I think a lot of the value that I provide is one, a combination of just like the somebody to hold him both accountable on days where like when we need to be pushing towards something, and then also providing a little bit of like, there, friend. It's okay that you didn't do your skill work for the day because work was a bear and you just ran out of time. So there's kind of that both sides of that coin of providing support, whether it's support saying like you need to get your ass in gear, or hey, it's okay, it's not the end of the world that you missed a training piece. Maybe this week is now official, like has started a deload week, and let's just turn it into one so that we can get back on track next week, which ties into the second point where some of it has to do with scheduling. It's like I'm somebody who's like a working professional. I want to get the most out of my training. I want the optimal dose for me and what my goals are and what so that I can keep progressing. But it's a little bit too much for me to think in that manner, and then whether it's write my own programming, go to affiliate class, take class, and then maybe do a little bit of extra work afterward. Instead, I can have a remote coach who's like, hey, here are the things that we're going to use the Misfit Athletics template. I'm going to pick and choose the training pieces that I know that you will benefit the most from. I will make sure that the timing makes sense. So if you're saying you only have 2 hours to train start to finish, it's like, okay, that probably means 2 to 3 training pieces, depending on how long they are. And then making sure that the week, the month, the phase, the year is structured in such a way that we're able to see progress. And then obviously like the standard remote coaching kind of gambit also includes like we're modifying movements for injuries, you're modifying movements in favor of choosing a weakness versus if Tony's exceptionally good at ring muscle ups, like sorry Tony, you're probably not going to do very many ring muscle ups. You've got a 500-pound deadlift at 86 pounds body weight. Like we're probably not deadlifting for load all that much. So that's more of just like the nuance of what our kind of job is in a very small nutshell. But as far as like the person that might apply for remote coaching, that is one of them too. Working professional wants the optimal training situation and just doesn't have the time or energy to do it themselves, and is going to delegate that to one of us or one of our remote coaches.
I think reframing success is a really big part of that too, because a lot of athletes get to a certain part of their journey and those PRs slow down. You've lost your beginner gains and you feel like you're stagnating, but you're actually just not aware of what is actually happening and progressing. And I think that's an opportunity for a coach to help kind of restoke the fire for an athlete that might be feeling like their glory days are behind them. And, that's something as silly as like, hey, you kept your splits consistent for a 12-round workout, or hey, you actually kept your big toe down on your first pull of your clean, like things that an athlete may not see, a coach does see, and kind of helps, create the momentum they might need to blast them through a period of a funk.
Dragon mode.
You trying to blow up the microphone, Hunter?
What am I doing? Am I breathing? Am I breathing too hard?
Into
phase
it.
two.
Yeah.
Phase two starts Monday, November 6th. And when we announce this, there's a pretty good chance that the remote coaching slots are going to get filled. So just in terms of a timeline, we're about 2 weeks. Once this gets published, it will be about 2 weeks away from phase two starting. Starting at that time is the most ideal for athlete and coach. You can start anytime really, but being able to set goals for a phase to begin is a good start. So remote coaching slots open. They won't be open for very long. Good luck to you in snagging one of those spots. I wanted to talk about, so when this podcast is dropped, we will be beginning primer week and we will be going into retest week. And it's a pretty smooth transition from the remote coaching conversation because we have 7 weeks of programming that lead us up to primer week and retest week. And I'm very much all in on stimulus for my athletes during that period of time. Phase one, we have a mandatory muscle endurance workout every single day. And for a competitive CrossFitter, 7 weeks of you need to focus on bar muscle ups in this workout. I need you to dial back your row pace or your run pace to do this sort of thing. I think that can be pretty challenging, even though they really start to see the progress when we get to this point. I like when we get to primer week, no matter the level, to almost every single day during that week have one conditioning piece and tell them to get the best score possible. Let them compete again. Let them go into this and like, listen, if you're still working on, if you're listening to this and you're still working on those individual stimuli, that's okay. But like, I look at Monday, 3 rounds for time, ski 1K, 11 muscle ups, 12 push jerks at like a moderate weight, rest 5 minutes between rounds. I like the idea of someone who's basically only been able to compete on machines for the last 7 weeks to be able to come into this workout and say, try to find a training partner, try to get back into the idea of you have one singular piece. How is your warm-up protocol? How are you thinking about attacking this piece? Do you remember how to game a workout to go into it and say like, what is the best way for me to get this time? And I think that sets people up really well, not only in terms of the volume being a little bit lower, but like getting back into like, this is for time, this is a race, this is a sport, and then going into retest week, because I mean, we can move on to how you guys would coach for an athlete in retest week. This is probably a little bit different than just following the blog, but like getting back into that mentality and then having those, 4 to 6 things where we're really locking in on it and having the test retest model, I think can be super helpful.
The conversations I have around retest week with athletes are, there's a handful of things that are obviously tested kind of like with the goal in mind of like the muscle overload for this phase or gas for the following phase or cardio for the phase after that kind of vibe, which is obviously a nice thing if it really aligns with the athlete's goals, but sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you have an athlete who's a monster muscle overload and terrible at gas or good at cardio and not good at gas. Is that we usually have a conversation centered around of like, if you look at what's ahead for the upcoming retest week, which one or two of these things you think you stand to gain the most, and what have you put the most work in and most effort into this phase, and think that you'll see the biggest rewards here, and then almost help them set the expectation ahead of time of like, oh yeah, I can hold, let's say the cube test, for example, I held 900 last time, I think I can hold 950, and then maybe they hold 975, and that, they're able to update their athlete IQ chart and their gear matrix, and that helps them progress throughout the season. So I think that, circling the enemy on the calendar kind of thing, putting a lot of thought and focus into like what has changed over the course of the phase, kind of going back in your log, looking back at things you've done previously and using that information to really make sure that we have a great game plan. And then I often give them a little bit of grace here when it comes to these movements where it's like, hey, if you do that piece and you fucking hammer it and you don't feel like you have the juice to do X, Y, and Z after, maybe you hit some accessory in mobility and you're out for the rest of the day. Like, let's set the expectation of like, we need to have it when we need to have it. So I'd rather allow you to do one or two things like beautifully than to like just feel like there's this pressure to do your entire full training session if you kind of accomplish the main goal of a phase, which is finding something you're not good at, training at it for a handful of weeks, and then trying to beat that again. So, I think it's a fun time to let athletes kind of like basically show out and show off kind of the fitness they've gained and the, athlete IQ they've improved throughout the past 7 weeks.
Yeah, the retest week, a lot of it depends especially when you're talking about remote coaching. A lot of times when we take a look at what kind of movements are biased or what stimulus are biased, like that, the first question that I ask is like, is this correct for my athlete? It's like, is this folk, because the general template we make sure is well rounded for the athlete who doesn't have a remote coach, right? So that from the beginning of the season all the way through the open, quarterfinals, and semis, like you will get to everything at some point, but for remote athletes it's more about like, well, what things really need to be worked on. We're rearranging the schedule from day to day as needed, and then it's more again about like retesting the things that we are focusing on, whether that is stimulus kind of centered, or maybe it's a specific movement. Maybe we swapped out a certain movement in a test and we're really hammering that in a skill piece, and it comes down to, hey, like, you've worked really hard on this. You have X number of examples of, in the workout you gave, Drew, it's like, well, what pace are you going to ski at? Well, we've got X number of examples to refer to. You've got a gear matrix that you've been filling out, a spreadsheet that tells you exactly how fast you should be going given the work to rest kind of ratio. So it's a lot of it has to do with applying the fitness and applying, in a lot of ways, just the knowledge that you've gained about your capacity over the last few weeks. Because at the end of the day, the test retest is kind of unique. And my perspective on it is like, you can give an athlete a workout today and then have them retest it tomorrow and get better. And it's not because they got fitter, right? It's because they got smarter. They knew how to attack the test a little bit better. So some of those conversations have to go to like, hey, don't, here's how we want to get better at this workout. Here's how the way that we want to improve it. We don't want to just game it by saying like, oh, I remember doing this last time, so I'm going to not do that this time, and then my score got better. And it's like, okay, you got a better score. Is that indicative of improved fitness, improved athlete IQ, or is it just you remember how the test went on day one and you didn't do that here and you got better? So a lot of it has to do with the nuance that the athlete is having or has in their program based on kind of what they're focusing on for that retest period.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we do every year is observe the community, the CrossFit sport community at large, and update this list that I refer to as Murderer's Row. And it's these movements where a lot of times it's not even as much fitness level. Of course, it could be GPP, but it's like this person otherwise should be able to come in and do well in this workout, and they get stopped dead in their tracks. And the obvious ones are things like a legless rope climb or high rep GHD sit-ups or pressing capacity or things of that nature. When we've got 12 movements on that list this year, and there's some variance between MFT and Hatchet. But if I've got 12 movements on that list and I look at one of my athletes and I get to cross off 6 or 7 of them, that's not their Murderer's Row list. So I got to be able to go in and say, if we're testing, these 12 movements for the community at large, which ones should stay, which ones should go? How do I personalize this and come into it from that perspective? So that's something with remote coaching. Like, we are going to apply our test retest model to the things that you specifically need to work on when we're biasing energy systems, machines, stimulus, which lifts should you be prioritizing, those sorts of things. And that's, I think, what changes a lot of stuff. The other part is, I think retesting is different at different parts in the year, especially if you're following the blog. I'm looking at these retests right now, and so much of the interval and Metcon retest would have to do with your handstand walking capacity and your ability to do the pirouette, and then your ability to do legless rope climbs, right? So if we fast forward to phase 3 and the test is cardio based, there's a pretty good chance we're not going to have a super high skill movement in there. We're going to really put to the test what you've done to work on your engine and your athlete IQ all year long. So a victory there to me is like very cut and dry. A victory on these retests for phase 1, you have to be thoughtful about, like, I have gotten fitter and I have gotten better at all of these things, but if I go hammer the sandbag and run as hard as I can, I'm going to bring myself back to the legless at a pace that just doesn't really make any sense for me. And you could, by being fitter, do worse. Like, for a lot of people, that 15-minute AMRAP is how many legless rope climbs did I get in it? Like, of course, that's how many rounds you got, but like, how many legless rope climbs did I get? And if you do some math and figure out what your rounds were like before, you got to stay within the vicinity and be like, not only did I get 1 or 2 or 3 more legless rope climbs, how did you feel? Like, if you got, 7 the first time that you did it, how did you feel for your first 7? Were they a joke? Then it's like, okay, amazing. Even if I fuck up, my strategy from here, just the idea of barely making it up a rope to like actually making real progress, I think is huge. And the same thing goes for the interval retest. Like, you've done a lot of burpee box jump overs. You've done a lot of burpee box jump overs in phase 1. And that's something where you can really move the needle on desensitizing your brain and getting fitter. But if you struggle with handstand walking, you're going to end up back there. So how much of that extra energy should you use on the burpee box jump overs, or should you do them at a similar pace that then leaves you at a lesser amount of fatigue, that sort of thing. So there's quite a few things in here that are like that. And then it's always cool to have Tour de Misfit in the cube test coming back up, because so much of that is based on like, did you eat your vegetables? Like, is your athlete IQ where it needs to be? You should be able to go in and thoughtfully choose a new pace for this stuff. And, a lot of times, again, that desensitizing to something, like if it's not as stressful for you, there's a good chance that you can add even more calories or knock your split down a little bit there. So I always think it's important to remind people what our goal is with primer week and retest week. It's a sport. It's less volume. It's higher intensity. It's getting back into the gamification of what's going on. It's been a long 6 weeks from week 2 through week 7. I've gotten some really good feedback on people following the deload and getting some really good scores, especially on machine pacing, with people coming back from a deload and just, really giving their body a chance to rest. So, if you are able to go faster, it's better stimulus, you're getting fitter, just a little nod to like doing less for a week can really help you for sure. I don't know if you guys have gone through deloads yet with any of your remote clients, but currently coming out the other side is getting some really good feedback just in terms of scores.
And I think what's a critical skill that you sort of said fast, but maybe everyone didn't pay attention to, is like, it is a skill to go to that place once or twice in one day. And I think that's an element of that is often lost on the people who aspire to be competitive athletes, is they love the grind, they like the training, they like to go in and they like see these idols who can go on there on game day and can smash these workouts and wonder how they close that gap. You have to practice that skill. You have to sleep like they do. You have to eat like they do. You have to warm up like they do, activate, hammer a workout, then cool down, recharge, do it again. And if you don't train that regularly, you can't expect to have that skill when you want to have it at a local competition or quarterfinals or semifinals. So I think that's another part of our athlete development that's often missed or not paid attention to in the same way. It's like, oh yeah, I did all my bitch work pieces, so in theory I should be fitter. It's like, yeah, you should, That's obviously important that you do those things, but if you aspire to be a competitive athlete, you have to practice the skill of competing, and you have to deal with the nerves and the anxiety and the wonder and the doubt that you're going to be able to do better. But you have to learn how to live with that, because that happens to everybody, and you can't think that's something that's, solely your problem and nobody's else's. But until you go through it, you won't know that when you go through that situation that you're going to be fine. And I think, everyone knows what I'm talking about when it comes down to doing an open workout. The hour or 2 hours leading up to it, you're anxious, you don't want to eat, it's hard to warm up. If you do one more muscle up, you'll never be able to do them ever again. And all of a sudden you get through that workout, and all of a sudden this ease goes over you. The more you practice that, the easier that becomes, and it just becomes, this is what I do when it's game time.
If the workout is wheelhouse, so you sign in Monday, retest week. If the workout is wheelhouse, we'll use day one as an example. Are you asking your athlete to just do that fourth gear build run? Are you keeping them like we've done all of this work the entire time? And obviously this is going to be different from athlete to athlete, but when you sign in and you're hearing from us, like, just do one piece, the other pieces that aren't the tests are still there, right? Like, they're still on the site. When are you asking an athlete to do the Echo Bike sprints on day 2, the build run on day 1, the 3 5-minute AMRAPs on day 3 instead
I
of
would
the test?
definitely look at what's around it and what's coming up throughout the rest of the week to make sure I don't, if an athlete has the goal of hitting a really important test for them on Monday and Friday, and the Echo Bike sprints come on Wednesday, and that might frag them so bad that they can't hammer Friday, I might say, hey, we move that to after Friday's workout, or maybe Saturday to kind of wrap the week out. I am actually a huge fan of, when an athlete's got a rest day coming up, that I can ask them to go a little bit deeper into the bag, make them go a little bit further, because they have that rest and recharge day, whether that's a math or a swim or one of our recovery kind of flushes here. I think they can still do those things, but I think you have to plan accordingly. That's then again a plug for remote coaching is we think ahead to if this is these two things are your main goats for the phase, and we've been working really hard the last 7 weeks, we should spread them out. We should make sure that what's around them makes sense for what you're having for the rest of the week. And then, athlete to athlete, you have to know them hopefully enough that, build running doesn't kill them, but bike sprints do, or maybe bike sprints aren't that bad, but the pounding on the legs of those build runs makes it impossible to do burpee box jumps. So again, that's another plug for remote coaching, is that we try to think about these things ahead of time and what makes the most organizational sense to be able to give the best effort come time to train that skill. Bless you, Hunter. When it's game time, and we're really, oh, that was your chair? Your chair yawns?
It was my chair.
Damn. All right, I'll shut the fuck up then, Hunter. But basically making sure we think ahead so you don't have to, or we at least teach you how to think like us when it comes to structuring your week, when it comes to retest week.
I just prioritize the tests that were tested in week 1 and then build everything else around it. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're all front loaded. It's just looking at recognizing that one for the most part for athletes, it's retest week, but we still want to train, right? We can't lose if we plugged in a deload week, if we had a primer week, and then we also had test and retest week, and all of those, the expectation is to hyper focus on 1 or 2 pieces. We've just reduce the number of training pieces that we have significantly that we're actually using. So for me, it's just we think about what pieces need to be retested, if there's any interference with surrounding training pieces and moving those around. And at the end of the day, the non-retest pieces are a lower priority. They're not zero priority, but they are a lower priority than the retest. And it's kind of our job, remote coach, or just if you're doing this on your own as an athlete, to prioritize being able to do that, and then consider, like Sherb said, does running fuck up your legs enough that it could legitimately impact your ability to do the Tour de Misfit or a shitload of burpee box jump overs, that sort of thing. So erring on the side of caution is maybe not the right term. It's just
priorities, right?
Rack and stack the priorities.
Yes.
It's the priorities.
I think I'll go first on final thoughts. For me, going in for those 2 weeks and playing the sport again, I think is really important, even this time of year, just to remember where you're at. And I think one of the reasons why my remote athletes are pushed to do that specifically is because I get really into the stimulus at this point in the year in terms of like, we're picking one movement and it's like that movement's for time in a triplet. And like what's happening outside of that, of course, needs to be fitness and you need to push and have an effort there and a focus there. But it's a very weird thing for an athlete to come off of the CrossFit Games and then be told, like, don't get the best score possible on this workout. Get these 25 handstand push-ups done each round as quickly as possible and transition out a little bit slower than you'd be used to. So I think that boxes them in a little bit on the mental side. They start to see the progress by this point in the phase, which is super helpful. But like releasing them to go find a training partner and race again for one piece a day, I think is really important. I think it keeps some of that competitive fire going. I think there's maybe a little bit more fun associated with being able to do something like that, as opposed to like, okay, well, you better be ready when you sit down to do your seated legless rope climb. You know, if you rode too hard leading into that, it's not what we're looking for within this piece. So, use these next 2 weeks to remind yourself that it's a big fitness racing sport, and pick one piece per day to either get a score from someone on Discord or find a training partner and actually go in and race them. Because before you know it, it's going to be week 2 and phase 2. We're going to be asking you to prioritize that gas stimulus most days, where you're going in and rowing a tick harder than you probably should be in a Metcon, and what does that lead to with the other pieces and all that. So enjoy the pain and fun of competing again for a couple weeks.
What you got, Hunty?
Who's next? Oh.
All right. Yeah. This is full podcast final thoughts.
Ooh.
No, it's quarter.
quarter?
All right. Well, if you want to, bless you. If you need advice on breaking 100,
What's the advice? I'm trying to break 100 next week.
When it comes,
fewer swings,
Be better than shit.
the tee to the hole.
Oh, fucking burn those worms.
Use your putter. Sure. Just keep your putter. Only use your putter. When it comes to retest, I think the priority conversation that you have to have with yourself is really important. Understand that there's like a larger macro plan at play. So, you know, when you prioritize something, you automatically relegate something else to a lower priority. And that has to be the case. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So thinking about whether, you know, having the week in advance, whether you're a remote athlete or not, like you have the ability to see what is coming up. So taking the extra time, you know, on Sunday or Saturday, the week before, whatever that day is for you, to take a look at the pieces that are coming up, identify like, yep, that's a, you know, kind of the red circle around, like that's the enemy that we need to slay for the week. Prioritize placing that in a position that allows you to actually execute and do that well, instead of putting that on, you know, the last piece of the day on Wednesday before a rest day when you're smoked. Just comes down to prioritizing things appropriately based on what you want, while also recognizing that, like, when you prioritize something, you are not prioritizing something else, and that's okay, because we will prioritize the things that aren't prioritized now. That's just the nature of writing a well-rounded, varied program, which is our job. So for the athlete, it's just focus on kind of the alligator closest to the boat, which is the retest pieces that you're getting after, you're really kind of challenging yourself on, or, you know, like Drew said, maybe the nuance of a specific movement, a specific machine, and the associated pace, that sort of thing.
Whew, you guys kind of said most of it. My thing would be probably plug to.
No, you didn't have
That's
to.
right. Plug to remote coaching here. One of the biggest values of a remote coach, Hunter actually wrote an article on this, I think, a couple of years ago, is being like the thermostat in the room, making sure you don't get too high or too low. And I think the peaks and valleys of a retest week can really fuck with an athlete, and not having that person to talk talk through what went well when things feel like they're, it's raining shit outside is really important for making sure that you don't lose the momentum that you've gained through 7 or 8 hard weeks of training. And, having those situations where like one bad performance or one, ill-chose strategy piece causes you to feel like you waste an entire 8 weeks, on the front end there can be very damning to an athlete. So having someone to bounce, your thoughts off, basically like a exercise therapist, for lack of a better term, is a really important value in what remote coaching brings to an athlete. So if you're on the fence and you can, swing it financially and you feel like you haven't broken through to the level that you want to, remote coaching is that thing that's going to help you stay more even keel and really achieve more of like a steady baseline of fitness instead of, swinging up and swinging down so often.
Did we do it?
I don't know, Ted, did we do it? What's your final thoughts?
Oh,
We did it.
oh, damn.
I think we did it.
Excellent.
It's my final thought.
Excellent, Ted. Very good. We'll be back here next
tuning
week
in
for
to
your
another
quiz.
episode of the Misfit podcast. Thank you to our show sponsors, properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit, sharpentheaxeco.com. Use your favorite athlete code. You save 10%. They get money towards their competitive CrossFit season. MisfitAthletics.com, individual programming needs, and teammisfit.com for your affiliate programming needs. See you next week.